Welcome back, Legends, to episode 5 of the tutorial series for Grand Fleet Admiral. In this episode, we'll be going over boarding actions, ground combat, strikecraft, and carrier operations. So what is close quarters combat? Well, it represents ship-to-ship or ship-to-station combat where boarding parties attempt to take control of enemy vessels or objectives, and it's critical for capturing ships, disabling key targets, and contesting the objectives. There are typically 4 types of CQB units. You have your light, regular, shock, and power armor companies, and each one has a different focus and points of how much they cost. So obviously the power armor costs the highest amount, but it's the most effective. And your dropships will ferry around those companies while they are flying around in space. So how does the boarding process work? Well, when you have your dropships heading towards the enemy battle group, you have to declare what dropship is targeting what ship. So once you've done that, the defender has to roll a single ADS for every dropship that's boarding. So if there's 4 dropships, they're going to roll 4 dice. And if their ADS hits are successful, the dropship has to roll a save to make sure it doesn't get destroyed. And if you do not succeed in that save, that dropship and the company inside of that dropship is destroyed. So all of your CQB actions will be performed at the end of the turn, and all of the boarding actions will take place after the objective close quarter combat. And then there's a couple notes down here I'll let you read and be able to pause this and absorb whatever information you need to. So objective CQB, that is how you're going to gain points or gain extra stats depending on what scenario you decide to play. They're critical, absolutely critical to get those points. So if you're not attacking those objectives, you're never going to win a game. If it's sector snag, of course. We have many different strikecraft, and they're absolutely essential. I am a firm believer on the strikecraft. Not only are they cool, you get to have carriers and all that good stuff, but they actually can be very effective if used properly. That is, you don't want to send one interceptor or bomber towards a big group of ships with maximum, like a defender group with that they have to roll a 4 or above to strike you down. That's not a good tactic. There are, just like CQB, there's like 4 different types unless there is special like faction strikecraft. You typically have a fighter, a bomber, an interceptor, and dropships to ferry around your boarding parties in CQB. Each strikecraft costs a different amount of points, but the dropships are only going to cost what the CQB inside actually costs. So if it's just a regular basic CQB, that dropship's only going to cost like 3. But if it's the, light, is 0 typically, the dropship is free. But your troops are going to be almost worthless. Even though they still hit, but you got to roll like 8 or above, I think. Next, we have the carriers. Without carriers, you don't have strikecraft. Without strikecraft, you really don't have carriers because they don't bring that many weapons. The strikecraft are their weapons. These strikecraft are deployed during the activation phase of that carrier battle group. The amount of strike craft that you can deploy is calculated using the launch X trait. So if you have launch 3, that means you can launch 3 strike craft. If you use a special command such as scramble, 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 those 3 strike craft, if this special command is successful, turn into 6 strike craft that you can launch in one activation. Which that's a great. If you have a very strike craft heavy battle group or fleet, you absolutely, at a minimum, want to take scramble, 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 because it will allow you to deploy everything right off the bat as fast as possible within a couple activations. And those strike craft, when you deploy them, they can move 360 degrees in any direction using their movement stat. So if a fighter goes 10 inches, it can fly 10 inches at 0 degrees, it can fly 10 inches 90 degrees, it can fly 10 inches at 200 degrees, it can whatever, in that 360 degree radius, you can point and move to that direction. That's how agile they are. And as you see in the middle, there's a couple notes attributed to this, and I will let you read that as well. Likewise with this, there's a lot of mechanics that go behind Strikecraft. Instead of boring you with the details and droning on, I'll let you pause this slide and read everything and absorb all the knowledge. Take as much time as you want to read it, as there's a lot of stuff going on here. When you use Strikecraft in a game, for your first couple games, you're going to really want to slow everything down and kind of absorb everything that's happening and go over this slide or whatever's in the rule book over and over until you understand the concept, because there are a lot of little nuances that you're going to eventually understand, but it takes experience and time to get there with anything in life. So now we can talk about Strikecraft and the carrier tactics. So if you want to use them strategically and effectively, a couple tips that I can give to you is use your interceptors and fighters to shield your capital ships. You can overwhelm enemy defenses with them as well, and use waves of bombers to target those heavily defended ships, especially the ones that are a little weak in the ADS. Use your dropships to raid enemy ships if you desire, and primarily you want to contest objectives. Or you can just absolutely control the sky, dominate the airspace, eliminating all enemy strike craft to give you the absolute superiority in the space around you. Moving on to boarding, you can use your strike craft that have weapons and distract enemy ships while your dropships are moving in to capture objectives. You can use your strike craft to weaken different enemy defenses, along with teaming them up with your battle groups before you start the enemy boarding actions. So let's say you have a battle group of lancers that have assassin systems, and you want to, instead of focusing all the fire on the heaviest ship, you have a bunch of drop ships that are just ready to go in, but there's too much ADS around. You can use those lancers to, pick apart the escort ships or support ships, whatever has ADS, and it'll make it harder for that larger ship to be able to fight off the swarm of drop ships that are starting to land onto the large capital ship to initiate boarding CQB. You can also protect the carriers with escort ships to maintain your continuous strike craft support, so you don't lose your carrier and all the strike craft in it if you run into a bad situation before you get all of your strike craft off the carrier deck. And also focus on multi-pronged attacks to keep your opponent on the defensive. So always attack with different overlapping fire and incorporate those strike craft into that overlapping fire as well. So that leaves it for this episode. Our next episode, we're going to get into terrain, the scenarios that define the game, and some scenarios that I've been developing that are unofficial ones, and the objective play, how to, I guess, maximize the points that you can gather in your matches. But until then, I appreciate, like always, that you made it to the end here. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And I'll catch you next time in episode 6 for the tutorials for Grand Fleet Admiral.